classes at Fairfax County Public Access or whatever it's called now.
Yeah.
And he said, they have a radio station. You should get certified and we'll be Don and Mike. It's exactly what he said. I remember it like it was yesterday.
This might as well have been me so many years later.
What was the reason that came up was then I told him, I said, because I was 29 going on 30 about then, 93. Yeah. And I'd been playing in bands since I was 16 years old. And I realized that I wasn't really going to be the next John Bon Jovi.
It's a hard day.
Yeah. And I thought, I had been thinking, well, I'll go into radio and I'll play the records. You know, that's all I ever wanted to do. So I did. I came down here and I got certified and I actually had the Monday morning shift. I started there because I wanted to be the morning guy on Monday mornings from 9 to 11.
You were going to do, well, not drive time, but.
Yeah, but I mean, since it was make-believe or, you know, I was trying to.
Did it have an air signal back then? Like, were you around for an actual air signal or did they lose it even by that point?
I think we may have had it briefly.
Okay.
It wasn't long after that it was lost. What was it like? It was 9 watts or something.
I mean, that is the beauty of this radio station. I think it went out to
Gallows Road. Yeah. That was it.
It's the radio station without actual.
I think you had to have a special receiver anyway.
Yeah.
But so, yeah. And so I had this morning show where I would read news and weather and I would make up the traffic. And it was all kind of a farce. And I would play records. I'd play CDs. Actually played some records, but I had turntables back then. And of course, my brother never joined me because he was into his TV classes. And, you know how it is with people. It's like they cheer you on to something and then they never show up. It's like if you're in a band or something, you know. It's
they
never come see your band. So then there was a guy leaving the Friday night position, Friday from 8 to 10, I think. And I begged and pleaded because I wanted that. And what I did then was I started a show called Artie at Large, and it was a showcase for local bands. And again, not that I'm terribly altruistic. I did that so that I wouldn't have to pay cover charges to get in the local bars and see all the good bands like the Eccentrics and Brian Jack and Action Figures and ISIS and all these bands that have come and gone.
Wait, ISIS?
Yeah, there was a band called ISIS.
That's unfortunate.
Named after the goddess Isis.
Oh.
Since, like many things in our society, has been corrupted. Something beautiful turned to crap. But anyway, so we started, and then now my roommate at the time, my best friend Pete, because I'd left the girlfriend. Oh, so many things happened. I had this epiphany, a life change.
That's what happens when you get into radio. The bad hours and the girlfriends go.
No, it wasn't that. She didn't go. She just didn't think that I would ever amount to anything. And
showed her, sir.
So far, she's right. But in radio, and so we had broken up. So I was living with my buddy, and he worked at Nick's down in Alexandria, which is now a country bar, but back then it was Rock Palace.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would go down there, and we would we'd go anywhere. We call these guys. Brian Jack was always a good gig because it was always like a $15 cover charge, and Brian, all the girls were there and stuff. And so we would go and skip the cover charge. And back then we had a little FCAC photo pass, which was just about gold. I mean, people, you can show that to your average bouncer, and I don't want to.
They issue those things now, but it looks like a badge you would get to work a desk job. Like it would get you no traction now.
Right.
But back then it was like a press pass looking thing almost.
Right. And so we would go do this, and we would have bands in, and that's where it got kind of crazy, because we would have people in that we would have guys come in here and they'd just be smoking dope in the hallway, be like, no, get out of the parking lot, go over to the other warehouse. And
treating it like
by the way,
radio station
outside, it's changed so much here with the shopping district over there. I mean, this was all warehouses back then. This was Nowheresville.
Oh yeah, they built the whole, was it the Mosaic District,
Yes,
they
the
call it.
mosaic.
Yeah, which is just that what is it, that mixed resident or mixed use is the term.
Yeah.
Pretty much like all the crap that you white people want to shop at, you live above it
Seriously,
now.
yeah. It's like we got one Loudon out in Sterling where I live now. So, but so it was really nowheresville out here.
Well, there's like
there was a band rehearsal place, right? And it's right in the next warehouse over. It was.
yeah.
And I mean, that's where we would meet people too. And that place was a party joint. Like after my show at 10 o'clock, we'd wander over there and see who was rehearsing.
I don't know if that space is still used, but my brother used to use a house right next door to the station. And he told me this one really depressing story. His band was like playing at 1 or 2 a.m. And in the middle of it, some like old Latina woman just comes down the stairs to do her laundry. And I guess they'd been like keeping them up all damn night, jamming out, you know, till
They didn't know there was an old Latino one?
No,
I mean,
they
would be
just
kind of surprised.
They took like a basement entrance, and just out of nowhere, this old Latin woman comes down the stairs.
I have a story about somebody coming out of that's an old story from my band days.
Yeah.
It reminds me of something that happened up at State College. Maybe we'll get to that. But so these guys were crazy. They're drunk, and they would sometimes cuss on the air, but mostly not, thankfully. And this was all quote live on, back then it was on, I know in Sterling you're on 37 and it was on channel 27 or 28.
I think it's 37 out in Fairfax too. Yeah.
Is it now?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you still need to keep clean, even if it's a cable thing.
Sure. That's true. And, and we did for the most part. I mean, we had a couple of, it's not like they would, I mean, they're bands. It's not like they came in and did it on purpose to be shocking. They're just that way. But what we used to do, and I'm giving something away, is because it was Friday night, we had a cooler of beer, and I was a cigarette smoker back then. I guess I still am, sort of. I'm trying to quit that whole dating profile. Trying to quit. But there's if you go out the door here, I'll show it to you after this show. There's a utility door, and we found out that the utility door was always unlocked. And the beauty of that was, you know, if you had to go outside to smoke cigarettes, obviously, and you couldn't stand out in front of the building and drink beer. Well, the utility room in the summer was nicely air conditioned, and in the winter it was nicely heated. And it was just big enough that you could get 3 or 4 people in there to sit on the coolers and drink and smoke.
Wow.
While you're playing Stone Temple Pilot records.
Not a bad setup, man.
Or side 1 of, you know, the Purple CD. You know?
I got to check that out.
And so that's what we did. And I was here. And so in the meantime, then one day I said, gee, maybe I can turn this into a career. And I started putting, it's a really, I mean, and I'm not taking anything away from this facility, because it taught me how to structure a radio program, at least, you know, in that very rudimentary, elementary, you know, stage of my career. But your resume, when you're just working here or volunteering, and comparing it to a resume of someone coming out of a communications course, you know, it's a tough ride. And I think the ironic thing, again, irony in my life and career, is that I put resumes at every radio station I could find. Back then, we didn't have the internet, so you had to go to the library or you go to the employment office.
Where was that?
Oh, they're around. I don't even know if they're around anymore.
So
everything's so digital and internetized, you know. And you would look at the job listings. They had a book of them. They had computers, the old orange screen computers with listings. And
the old LEDs.
I would find these radio listings all over, you know, Norfolk and Pennsylvania, Philly, obviously, New York, Delaware, but all the surrounding shadow markets. And I was just sending out this one page, you know, my resume was basically, I do this at Fairfax County Access Cable. And then below that was, I'm an auto mechanic. And before that, I was a house painter, you know? And it was just a lot of people said, this just isn't going to ever happen for you. And what happened was eventually I was called, well, I pestered my way into, and there's a lot to be said in this business for pestering. I pestered my way to Jim McClure at WJFK, and I did not get the overnight weekend jazz music board up position. Did not get it.
That was the weirdest thing about JFK. It was like talk until what, 11?
Cool jazz.
Yeah, and then it was like 5 hours of boning music.
Night tracks.
And then was it the Farm Report 5 to 6 before Stern?
No.
Report? Okay.
I did the shit. No, the Farm Report was on Sundays. And actually, don't make fun of Farm Reports because I've heard them and they're fascinating. More on that later. But so we so Jim said, no, you didn't get it, but I'm going to keep your resume on file. He said, as long as you don't mind, this is what we have for you. Nothing,
You can paint the building.
$7 an hour and make sure, the lights don't go off.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that's fine. Anything. But naturally, I wasn't proud. And this is the beauty of it is I grew up in Fairfax and at the time I was living in Annandale. And so this radio station, JFK, was 10800 Main Street where I grew up. I was born in Fairfax. I was born right down the street at Fairfax Hospital, which is Inova. And as it turned out, 3 months later, I saw, and this, they used to list, remember, want ads in the Post? Remember the Post?
You're taking me back, man.
Yeah, there would be, under our receptionist, before it would be radio, and there would be this posting, WJFK, and I saw it again, and I put in the same thing. I didn't hear anything for a week. I call. Now I know it's Jim McClure, though, so I got a name. And I get through to him, and he goes, yeah, I was going to call you back. And we have that same position. And he said, do you want to come in and talk about it? I said, sure. And I went in, and I remember I wore a suit, and Jim comes swinging off the elevator, and he's wearing like cargo shorts that are just tattered. He's got an old JFK T-shirt on. He's just...
No, there isn't, especially for JFK, but I mean radio in general.
Real radio in general, but I didn't know any better.
Hell.
I didn't know any better. And of course I wanted, to impress. So I went through, and I remember it was 100 degrees. It was July or so, August. And he said, great, show up this weekend and we'll get you trained. And so that's $7.50 an hour, I think.
And that was 96.
No. Yeah. 96. Yeah, because like I said, I did about 3 years.
And they were, as of I think like 09 or so, no, later than that, 2011 or so, paying people $8. So there's that.
Yeah. gotta make that bonus. Yeah. Keep that budget spare, baby.
Gotta pay the drive time guys their fat quarter of a mil or whatever.
Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, I've learned a lot. And it's a long story. But even, once I went to California and started really doing things on my own, or seeing a little higher view from the mountaintop, there's a lot of money. There's plenty of money. It just comes down to what they think people show up for,
at my stint at JFK, I remember having conversations about salary where I was treated like the pretty bitch in high school, I was the gorgeous prom queen, and everyone hated me because I was making $10 an hour as opposed to $8 doing production and board hopping and stuff like that. And I got many a speech from my boss at the time was CK. And he was saying that the money was just going down the toilet. I think it said they'd billed 10 million the year, or no, 20 million the year prior, and they're billing 10 million in ad revenue that year. And that's why.
Well, that's their own fault. I mean, if you want to get into how CBS keeps threatening to sell all their radio stations, but to CBS, that's a bold new step forward in broadcasting, is that they're going to sell all their radio stations because they don't know what to do with them. And that's their own fault. They ditched hot talk after the Janet Jackson thing. They went all sports, and it happened to us in Sacramento. They took a station that had their morning show in the top 5 with 2554 male, and plunge and basically anywhere from 12th to 9th to 8th overall in the 12 plus, category, and plunged it into the 20s, into the 20 share, and
no, it was such an overreaction. I guess, yeah, like you said, we'll get to that, but
and then nothing ever came of the Janet Jackson thing.
No, of course not.
They weren't
Except
fined, nothing happened.
I know the FCC restructured, so apparently they can just fine your balls off, pretty much.
Well, that's fine, but I mean,
teach the guys what to say and what not to say.
The thing is that, and having worked for CBS, and CBS is a great company. Don't get me wrong. I mean, their benefits are fantastic. It's a shame that they're going to give this up. But for them to think that they have lost revenue because of the listenership or the market or whatever they think it is, it's not that. It's that they went all sports because all sports is safe, and it is, but all sports doesn't get you any ratings. It just simply doesn't. So the media buyers look at you and they say, okay, well, you're a sports station, so here's your Budweiser and your Miller Lights and your Pepsi and your McDonald's ads, and there you go. And then they turn to Hot AC, the Hispanic stations,
El Zol,
and your HURs, your urban, and they give them more.
But they've hamstrung the guy talk thing. I mean,
and nobody will pick it up. That's the thing. But I mean, like we were talking before we went to air, I think when CBS does finally carry through with their threat and sell all their radio stations, it's going to be good overall because it's going to open up a lot of opportunity. People are going to buy those stations, and I think it's a positive thing. I mean, as much as I hate to see, I mean, if you know CBS's history, Bill Paley, who basically invented the radio network in 1928, I think. He's rolling in his grave because he would never let this happen. He would find a way to make it work. And I think that's what's happened with CBS radio ever since Mel Karmazin left, ever since Dan Mason especially left. They've just lost their desire to even bother with it. They don't have any radio people, and I don't know what these guys think they're going to do when they get rid of their radio division. They're not going to have anything to do. So they're selling off their job.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to kind of put that out there to whoever may be listening, that once you've, pat yourself on the back and say, well, and you go to your bosses and say, sold them off and got the best money on the market, they're going to say, thanks for your help. See ya.
Yeah.
And that's going to be that. And then your resume is going to be, I'm the guy who sold the CBS Tiffany network off. And everybody's going to say, well, we're not in the business of selling radio stations. So, and that's how it's going to work. That's just the way things work, but
20 years prior to all this going down, you get your board op job.
Yeah. So I'm doing, I come in on, I do.
And this is like walk me through who's on the station and at what times and like just how big Guy Talk is right now.
Right. So I get there and my shift, I guess, is I go in Saturday nights and Sunday nights because they were doing the jazz Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And a girl named Shirlita was that jock, and she showed me how to do it. And so Saturday I would come in and at 10 o'clock.
So there was an actual nighttime jock that did that?
No automation. I mean, we had cart machines, all that good stuff.
It was kind of automated. I didn't really
CDs,
listen intently. Yeah. Like once Don and Mike went off air, I'd occasionally listen to Greaseman, but.
Right. And when I started, because I guess the sports junkies, or the junkies as they're called now, are in their 20th year. So they started that summer. They were doing weekend stuff with the Redskins, and they were doing a weekend.
And they were picked up from not this station, but something comparable, right? Like another public access.
Bowie.
Yeah.
Buoy public access, apparently.
God, they set the bar a little high for public. I remember doing my public access show starting, Christ, 8 years ago at this point, and being like, you know what, I'll give it 6, maybe 8 months. JFK picks me up and we'll just go from there. And
yeah, well, yeah. And the thing, and so
didn't work out though.
I expected to carry on my Friday night show, but
Yeah.
as it turned out, when I started working at JFK, it was, like I would come in for my Sunday shift and they'd be wrapping up Redskins radio. But it was Howard Stern, G. Gordon Liddy, Don and Mike, and Surf's progressive show was at 7:00.
Really?
As I recall.
Just Surf doing like a rock radio.
Yeah,
thing.
when I started.
Wow.
I don't know. No, Surf was gone. Actually, I take that back. At 7, after Don and Mike, I guess they would do the jazz music, maybe?
I thought it was Grease. Was it not?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I thought it was
Grease
Grease Man even by then.
Yeah, it was Grease. Nino Grease Manelli. It was Grease Man.
Wow.
What a doodle day.
I love how everyone can do at least a somewhat crappy Grease Man.
Honestly, the thing about Grease Man, he really is an icon. Don and I would talk about that even out in California, how much he was so he left such a footprint on the business.
That always cracks me up. I remember nothing but Don and Mike, Stern, and then a little later Opie and Anthony all would just it sounded like crapping on the Grease Man. And like 10 years later, everyone who mentions them is like, seriously, we really respected him. Right?
Yeah, it's really true.
Bizarre.
It's really true. The guy had a great career. He was kind of bums rushed out for reasons that don't, well, I mean, they were obvious reasons, but it doesn't mean that, but
yeah,
you have to look at something like Grease Man, and you make a mistake like that, and your salary carries a major part of the budget, and they say, well, if we get rid of this guy, we got all that money back.
What were his 2 lines? I know he had the one with like Lauryn Hill and something about guys being dragged behind.
Yeah,
was it like 2 in tandem?
I don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
But the truth is
you can look it up.
You can Google it. And the thing is, that kind of stuff, you can do your apology stuff, and you can, like right now, I think Grease Man could work. He would not make nearly any kind of the big rock star money he did, but if he really wanted to be on the air, he could be.
My very first
without a big hassling, and if any of that stuff revisited him, he could just say, look, I learned my lesson
a long time ago.
Yeah. And I apologize, and I not proud of it at all, but you get caught up in the moment. So anyway,
he was doing pay to play at my very first station. We had like some crappy AM signal.
Right, I remember that. Yeah. That was after the big brouhaha.
Oh yeah,
thrown out an arrow
several years later, and I was I got to tell people.
And
I meant
JFK and Grease Man was on. He was doing his morning show at night, and he was on in L.A. actually, and
That's
so he would record it or something. He was getting up at 3 a.m. in L.A. and doing a show. I don't know, originally on, I don't know how it's so long ago.
I forgot that it wasn't a live feed, so it was legit an LA morning show. I just, for some reason, I figured he was during the.
I forget the logistics. All I know is that we were stringing tape for that.
Okay.
Reel to reel on Studer decks, and so. God, man, I thought this was going to be a shorter story.
No, man, let's just prattle on for 90 minutes and go to Patriots.
We're not even out of 96 yet.
Nope. Remember Pearl Jam?
At the time, so that was the lineup. And then, the Junkies were doing weekends. And so I did that summer and winter and the following. So I did that for a year, those overnight shifts.
Just the weekends?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing else except like vacation shifts for the overnights.
And was there anything like cool going on behind the scenes, or this was like so dead?
I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything. I would go to a staff meeting, maybe one that I can recall, and I would see all the faces and the names, like John Pops, Cameron Grace, Rob, Charlie, Tammy Sachs, who was the promotions director, and Jeremy and Jim, all these behind the, the stuff that Don and Mike would talk about. So I would meet them.
Exactly. It was funny how like so many people were celebs via that show, and they're just completely behind the scenes guys. Like it doesn't dawn on you like that guy's just a janitor, really, and they're talking about him on air for whatever reason.
Yeah, and Ben. Yeah,
I remember like 20 years later, I came in to do, in essence, what you did, where I was handing off demos and crappy resumes, where it's like I was a board op for 3 weeks. And I met Colette, and I would walk out. And I was like,
and
that was Colette. And it's like, dude, she's just a chick working a desk, like.
And before Colette, the woman that I forget her name, I could see her face, but it'll come to me. It doesn't matter. But I would hand her my resume so many times that she knew me when I'd walk through the door.
Oh man!
And so that was it. And then what finally happened was the Redskins started their next season, and I was asked to move to the Westwood board, or not the Westwood, the Redskins Radio Network board. Oh, I forgot. Yeah. Before that, in that year, I did start doing work for Westwood One in the back rooms where we would rebroadcast the G. Gordon Liddy show.
Okay.
And next to me was a guy named Dave Lynn, and he was in charge of recording and rebroadcasting the Don and Mike show.
Was this for syndicated stuff, or?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, back then the Westwood studios were in the back of the station.
Okay.
And they were just little cubby holes, and they had 2 decks, and you would the G. Gordon Liddy show would start. You'd be recording it, and you would insert the commercials and the tones to fire off the satellites. It was really convoluted stuff. Ironically, it's pretty much what I do now, but it's a lot easier. But you were paid by Westwood. It was a separate paycheck, and it was better money. It was like $10, I think. $10 an hour, not a day. So
I love that on radio you have to specify.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So so I forgot that's what I was doing, and I met a guy named Brian Cosgrove, and I worked with Jim McClure closely because he was in charge of Westwood stuff, and so I got to know people that way, and I got to make some really epic mistakes, and really cut my teeth. Now I was working.
Did you forget to like bleep Liddy when he said the Washington Post?
No, that wasn't my job.
Okay.
But it just has to do with network programming, which, Oh
no, I would do something similar for Sirius for a long time, where you would cut to a commercial break, and it was my job to then play Sirius commercials. And sometimes
and if you forget, you screw up. Well, Sirius,
3 minutes of dead air.
Sirius, it's a satellite, and with Westwood, it's 300 stations. Not a big deal.
Yeah, no difference.
Not a big deal when the program directors of all those little farmers markets out there have your phone number and are calling, asking why.
Oh God,
Lexus commercials are going over.
I would be flop sweating if that happened.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but you have to recover, and you have to, explain yourself and do it all over again and again and again, because that's what our business is repetition. So finally, so I've been there a year, and the Redskins season comes around, and so Jim asked me if I want to do the Redskins Radio Network board, which is when there's the main board, and then there's this side network board that feeds all of our affiliates.
Okay.
And that was so much fun, because then I got to work with Don for the first time, because Don did a pregame show.
I remember that.
Got to meet Don,
that was back right when they had.
And that's when the Junkies started to see. The Junkies had been a weekend show, which I wouldn't have known about, because I was only there at weekend nights. I had no idea what was going on weekends. And so then Don started interjecting them into the Redskins stuff, and they were getting more popular. And I even did some shifts with them back then. So I was doing that board, and it was fun. Those days, I mean, having that Redskins contract was, and this was pre Dan Snyder,
Oh my God. So there was like hope with the team.
Jack Kent Cook still owned it. Norv Turner was the coach. So it wasn't a lot of hope.
Yeah, that's true.
But I got to meet Norv Turner. I got to work with these people, and all very exciting. The catering was fantastic. And that's one of the things. And I worked for Redskins Radio for 3 more years. I think I eventually was the main board operator, which was really a cool, kind of a great thing to put on your resume.
So you're taking the feed from the stadium, and it's okay.
And then you're keeping your clock, and you're running the traffic reports. You're doing the local board, but it also feeds the network board where the other board op is, inserting.
I got you.
That thing, doing that job. It's you and I might understand what's going on. No one listening to us.
I don't give a damn
how it works.
I don't give a damn if this is just for me at this point.
All right. So the catering was fantastic, and as it turned out, I eventually started coming in and doing phone screen shifts for the junkies, because they eventually went to 7 o'clocks after Dynamite. And so now I was a utility player. I was all over the place, except for, and then I started working. Then they trained me to do Gordon Liddy's Best Of.
Okay.
So I would cover for John and Cameron when they were on vacation and run all the tapes for that.
Oh, so you would walk in and actually do the introductions for each segment and that kind of stuff?
Not for Gordon, because Gordon was just, as I recall it, was just, you just strung it up and rolled it. But you've still played the music intros, because Gordon's archive tapes were taped dry. The music wasn't in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would do that. And then eventually, because I knew the structure of the show, John or Cameron might be sick or something. And so the next thing I knew, I was sitting across from Gordon running his board.
And what is that like?
Hot. The studio was,
was it like an old guy thing? Like,
the story was that Gordon, because he had been in prison for, I don't know how many years he was in prison.
It was a while after the Watergate thing.
Yeah, like they gave him, he did like 7 years or 5 years, whatever. 15 minutes in prison is
yeah,
it would be enough for me. Probably too much.
Just the smell will probably never leave your nostrils.
Yeah, and Gordon went to prison in the 70s, so you can only imagine. But the story was that it was so cold in prison that Gordon always liked heat.
Really?
And like if he was in a car, he would turn on the heat in the summertime with the windows up.
And put in his tape of Messerschmitt engine noises.
Right.
He's a weird guy. And piss and Tupperware. I'm trying to think what else.
Yeah, I can't attest to that, but it's that's quite a story. The thing about Gordon was he was very nice, but like that the thermostat, it had to be like on 80.
Jesus, dude.
And I remember the first time I went in, it was wintertime or winter-ish. I was wearing a sweater and a shirt underneath, because you had to dress relatively nicely for Gordon. You couldn't do the t-shirt.
Wow. Okay.
You had to have a collared shirt at least, or a sweater.
Are you kidding me?
Well, yeah.
And he would do likewise. He was always in the suit.
Always in the suit.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I'm picturing him from like the cover of Will.
Always in the suit.
Okay.
Suit and tie, and maybe a golf shirt in the summertime, but only because
he's really kicking back on a Friday.
Yeah, right. Casual Friday for Gordon. Yeah. But he was really nice. He really was easy to work with.
Tight.
Because he wasn't a radio guy. So it was just basically turn on the mic and point at him, and off he went.
I remember when I was a kid and I first got into the station, I would listen pretty much start to finish. And so I was listening to this huge amount of G. Gordon, and I thought nothing of it. I'm like, I guess he's kind of funny too. And my mom went out and bought a couple copies of Will and just called the station, was like, can my boys come and like get those signed and meet G. Gordon? And they're like, yeah, sure. What the hell?
Yeah, he was really accessible.
Yeah. And I just never got off my lazy little ass to do it.
I got my dad a signed photograph of him with his Corvette, the classic one. But I got him to really sign it and personalize it.
Was it signed like virile, vigorous, and potent?
Yeah, it was from one of my dad's birthdays. And but I got Gordon to sign it in person because he had an auto pen, and all the requests,
I got you.
Actually had a signature signing machine. up in the office for, I mean, because God, he got so much mail. He was really popular. I mean, it was just really crazy.
Well, he was way more syndicated than anyone else at the station.
Mhm.
I mean, because Don and Mike, I think, would clown him for that he didn't care if like you took hour 1 or hour 2. He would just be like, play the damn show. I don't care. Give me a couple bucks for it.
Yeah, yeah, and he was he was all over the country. So it was a good gig, and he always had really interesting guests. I mean, I met John Walsh, America's Most Wanted.
Oh, wow.
I met Ted Nugent, who
I didn't realize. So Nuge was doing his conservative thing even back in the.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow,
you know,
okay.
and it's funny, and I've met people who've met Ted, and he's not very nice.
Uh-huh.
Like I got his autograph and stuff, but he's kind of like standoffish. But you know, you never know. It could be a bad day. But I've heard people say the same thing about him. I'm not. I will tell you, I'll put on Double Live Gonzo as quick as anybody though, because that's a hell of a album. So I don't begrudge the guy for his beliefs. I mean, never done anything to me, and I don't care. I love his guitar licks. But you know, I met him, and I met I don't know, all the newsies from back in those days.
Mhm.
You know, and then I was like, so I was this guy. I was all over the place, and then we did this crazy. Rock Newman, if you remember him, he was a boxing promoter in DC. I don't even know if he's still alive.
Yeah, he was like Riddick Bowe's guy, right? Or
Yeah,
no?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
And they gave him a show for a week during the Christmas holidays. And so
That is odd.
I was quote executive producer of that. And
It was a weird gig.
it was, except Rock was a really nice guy. He'd bring in a thing of donuts or bagels, or on Christmas Day, I don't know how he procured this, but he brought in a deli tray. I guess.
Jeez.
Well, I mean, he was pretty hooked up, but he was a really nice guy.
That's a Jewish deli.
Yeah, nothing like, well, that's true. And coming out of DC, it probably wouldn't be that difficult to find. But he was a really nice guy, unlike his persona, which he was this bulldog, you know, boxing promoter, and but God, in person, he was a remarkable fellow.
I remember when I was a little kid, I was just confused because he was wearing like the dashiki and crap like that sometimes, and I was just, as a little dude, I was like, he looks very white. I'm kind of puzzled by this, but
yeah, but he's very light skinned.
Was that it? Okay, yeah.
But he had Marion Barry in,
Wow.
Eleanor Holmes Norton in. I mean, he pulled some great
Jesus,
people.
man, yeah.
And so I did that. I did everything.
Please tell me you got a photo with Marion Barry.
I did not.
Oh.
Because I've never been much of a star banger in my career. There's been a few that I have gone fanboy on. Sheryl Crow out in California is a notable example. But most of the times I just let these people do their thing.
I'm with you. Marion, though, is like DC royalty, man. That's,
yeah, but you never know what you're going to run into if somebody's having a good day or a bad day. So it's better just to give them the benefit of the doubt, and you know, if they open up, then that's cool, you know. But if they're staring at their cell phone or whatever, you know, or talking to their publicist or stuff, you just
stay the hell out of the way.
Off of it. Yeah, because if you get one bad one, it'll tarnish you. You'll feel like never speaking, you know, like you'll feel like you're,
oh, yeah, man, that's like
the biggest jerk,
being a puppy that pissed on the rug,
right? Yeah,
with the newspaper.
yeah, and you wonder like, oh my God, you know, what did I do? Or so just all over the place. And then the Junkies had these part-time producers, and they were going through them, and eventually I landed working the board for the Junkies every night, and it was still part-time, but I was, you know.
And were you on air with them at that point? Like you would pipe up? Okay.
Yeah. And that started around 98, I guess. Yeah, 2001. No, 99, because I was with the Junkies for about 2 years. That was a fast 2 years, I think. And they had a contract renewal, and that's when CK, Chris Kennard, and I got our first full-time gigs.
Both of you, okay.
And it was,
I always forget where the accent goes in Chris's last name.
Oh, Kynard or
It's
Kennard.
yeah,
It's
Kennard.
Kennard, as far as I
Okay.
know. I just call him CK.
That's how I would always skate.
And I will divulge this. I don't know what CK salary was, and I doubt it was even 1 penny more than mine, but I was hired full-time to do that shift for $20,000.
Wow.
But I had full benefits and full benefits, and the shift wasn't that bad. It was 7 to midnight, so it's 5 hours. And I'd have some post-production in there. It was basically a 40-hour week. It was what I wanted to make of it.
I mean, for like 98, 99, that's not horrible.
No, and the benefits, I'm here to tell you, CBS benefits are the best in the business, as far as I'm concerned, as far as my experience.
Yeah.
So
kill for some benefits.
And I was still young enough. I didn't need benefits. Now I need.
I know exactly.
Now benefits are very important.
no, I mean now I'm getting my dental work done by like.
I just had so much dental work done. Oh my God! And my benefits right now aren't the greatest, but thank Christ, some of my dental work was covered because I had a bunch of work done because I had benefits in California. I just didn't use them, and so. But anyway, so that was that. That was how I got in. That's how I got into radio.
You are now a full-time producer.
This might be a 2-part interview.
That's what I was thinking for it.
And I was making good money because I was still doing Redskins radio, and that was a separate check. And also, JP and Cakes from the Junkies were doing a post-game show after Larry and Larry Michael and Jeff Bostic or whoever his co-host would be any particular year. So I was making an extra 100, 150, a week there. Mm-hmm. And so things were pretty good.
And you were pretty much the Junkies' same age. Were you going out and like partying with them at this point? Because they were.
I'm not the same age. I'm like an older brother. I'm like 5 years. I think I'm like 6 years older than them.
They were mid-20s then at this point? Or?
Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, if you're, if we're talking, I was working with them around 98 and 99.
Okay.
I was 35 years old.
Oh, so they were 30-ish then.
Yeah, they were still in their 20s. And, when you're in your 20s, you're invincible and you're still part of happening culture and stuff. And when you're in your 30s, like I was into Pearl Jam and stuff like that, but I wasn't participating, too much.
You were just an observer.
If I went to a bar to see a local band that was playing that kind of music, I can guarantee you that my back was on the wall because all the kids were younger, I knew my place.
You weren't out there moshing?
No. And yeah, so there was a little age difference. Now you would say that it's not that much of an age difference because those guys got kids. I mean, I can goof on them if I want because they got kids and I hear them talk about it. And it's amazing to me that they're so mature. And I'm kind of proud of those little guys, because they were so green when they came in. And we used to have so many. It was just.
Well, I mean, now they're the old guard of the station.
Yeah, and it's fun. I listen to them every morning when I'm coming home, and I listen to them, and I just, first of all, I love it when they don't talk sports like most people. I think,
I think they're kind of the only guys that were able to get away with that for a long time at the station. Like that was.
Yeah, and I know they still fight that battle, but I like listening to them talk about the Redskins because that's the only sport in town that I particularly waste my time with.
You and me both. Nats went down in defeat last night, and everyone's like, how are you doing? I'm like, don't give a damn.
I don't, because like it's same with the Capitals last year. I just don't put it, I barely put any more faith into the Redskins. It's all I can muster to even just care.
Exactly.
To even just care.
But you remember when they were winners. So you
absolutely.
have
And I'm, so it's not like it can all bleed out of you. There's always going to be a little bit of a Redskins fan in me, but I've definitely gone. So, I mean, this season, I don't watch pro football because I got things I got to do.
I've tapered off with it too, and I know that
it's because of the product. It's because they're no good.
Well,
and they've lost me because it's been 10 years and I'm that much older and I've got stuff I got to do, man.
Well, it's like Thursday night games. Half the time I forget they're on. Like I'll just be at a bar and I'm like, oh, there's a game. Oh yeah.
Right.
Sunday I kind of invest in, but then they've started putting the marquee games Sunday night instead of Monday night. So like I don't feel any guilt not watching the Monday night game either. And like I kind of feel like I have my life back. Because there was a time, dude, I was like Thursday night, all of Sunday, I was doing the Donnie G thing. You know what I mean? Just like worshiping at the pigskin altar.
Well, sure. And when you're younger, you can do that. I think as you get older, you find that there are things you would rather do. And if they're not going to put a decent product out there, why bother? You know, and take the Nationals. And when I saw the highlights this morning of them choking, for lack of a better word, and I'm not a professional sports player. You know, I know it's a tough gig. But the thing is, I know that as far as hockey, baseball, and basketball are concerned in this town, we may go very far in a season, but we're just not going to beat more established franchises. Just not, you know?
It seems very jinxed, especially the Caps, for Christ's sake, have fielded like what's I think considered one of the top squads in the league for years for them, and yet somehow have won like what, all of 2 series or some junk in like an 8-9 year span with Ovechkin.
And you can look at it in the cold hard realm of saying, well, the coaches and the trainers aren't preparing the team to go the distance.
Oh yeah.
But it also comes to culture. You know, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Chicago, New York, Islanders. These are storied franchises. Even the Kings back with Gretzky. You know,
you're right. I mean,
there's something that comes with that.
When were the Caps founded? Like 70s or some junk? I mean,
I don't know.
They had that one back when I was a little kid and I was into hockey to some degree. I remember they got to the Stanley Cup and were swept by San Jose, and that like broke my heart.
Right. And so I'm not saying it can't be done, but you know, it's not a jinx thing. It's just that this area, it's not conducive to being champions. I don't know what it is. You know,
no, you're right. We don't live and die by our sports, it feels like.
I think so. And I think there's a vibe there. And if you're into that esoteric kind of thing, I think sometimes in DC, we just assume shrug and go hang out and do other things. The best I can put it. But anyway, as far as the Nationals are concerned, you know, they'll come around. It'll come around.
No, if they ever get to the World Series, I'll be cheering my ass off. But till then, I'm not going to.
I'll be happy to cheer for DC when we actually get a professional basketball team, because we've got just amateurs out there. The Wizards are dreadful, you know. And I'm not just saying that.
I remember that.
I'm not just saying that because my ex-girlfriend is dating one of the managers on the team.
Oh, the hell with the Wizards then.
Right. Oh, I got stories. But I can't tell those stories on the air.
Make Cleveland flatten them every year.
Oh yeah, well, you know, I love a Wizards loss. Oh, I love it. Love it, bitch.
Makes you tingly.
Oh yeah. Oh, it makes me smile. So that's another story that I can tell you in the parking lot, maybe.
Oh yeah, man. Count me in. So you are now running the board with and producing for the Junks, and this goes on a couple
so
years.
We're talking about around 2000, and not really enjoying it, and I can say that now. They were very difficult to work with back then. Very young, very green. We were all very young. I was very young, you know.
Were they busting your chops, or they're just hard to rein in? And what was it?
Hard to rein in. The thing about the Junkies was, eventually I did not like working with them.
Okay.
But going out for a beer they're fun. They're nice guys. Like hanging out with any given one of them at a bar, like for the appearances and stuff. They're fun. They're funny, you know, and they're relaxed. But in that environment of working where they, you know, didn't really know how to, I don't think any of us really knew how to handle what we were doing. I mean, I was young career wise. I wasn't young.
Well, you're talking like a 4-hour shift. That's a lot of scheduling and a lot of.
Well, I mean, CK did all that. He was the producer. I was just board op.
You're board op. Okay.
But, you know, they were demanding, I guess. But when I look at it now, 20 years down the road and all the things I've done, I could handle that in a heartbeat now because I got more experience and I'm more professional, and I see things coming, before they get to me. It's experience. But back then I was just as green as they were.
Yeah,
So,
and even if you had some years on them, it didn't matter. You didn't have
right.
the experience.
As far as physical age, I was older, but in a radio career, we were exactly the same.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 20 years in the business, and so am I now. Now today. So, and I think even if, well, I do, I hear that they're still difficult but I mean, all talent is kind of difficult. You have to be a better producer. You have to be ready to, it's almost like
Were they just like trampling over brakes, things like that? I mean, just mechanical stuff, or?
No, it's just, they were just young kids. They're just all over the place.
I got you.
It was just, I don't know now because I've traveled so far down the producer road, that I don't know that stuff would bother me anymore. I think sometimes wow, they were green, but so was I. That's what I think. It's like, wow, I was green then too. Because now I've worked with some of the best in the business. When I went, California and worked with Don, and then I worked with Armstrong and Getty out there, and I worked for the news station KFBK with all their, and that's like the WTOP of Sacramento.
Okay.
So all their anchors have been there forever.
Yeah, they're not
Kitty
going anywhere.
Kitty O'Neill was Rush's intern basically when he was at KFBK, and now she's the afternoon drive news anchor.
Wow.
And so these are high echelon places, and you have to be able to navigate the talent as well as your commercial log. So if you're dealing with somebody who's grumpy or not having a good day or not a happy person in general, you have to know how to deal with that so you can get your job done. So when I was working with the Junkies, I didn't know any of that. It was like, well, why can't we all just get along and be cool?
Totally,
I'll tell you, you did bring back a funny memory. The thing that drove me crazy about those guys back then was they refused to buy their own headphones. And, like I had my Sonys, that I love
something
so much.
nice he came into the studio with.
Yeah, in your bag that you would bring with you, because they're kind of a personal thing. I'm kind of a germ guy, but I don't really have a problem with wearing, community headphones and stuff.
I'll do it, but I remember at JFK, you just had to expect that one of the two earpieces would be dead. Like at all times, you would be working with a crap pair of headphones if you didn't bring your own.
Yeah, that and finding the 1/4-inch plug, a 3/8 inch
the little adapters were missing.
That you will literally knife somebody in the hallway to get.
I guess for those that haven't been in a studio, every headphone has like the little, I guess, what is the tiny size like that you would plug into an iPod?
Yeah, it's like an eighth of an inch. I can never get them right.
Yeah, and then what is used throughout the studios is what looks like you'd plug into a guitar amp.
Right.
And
which I think is a 1/4 or 3/8.
Yeah, and there's adapter pieces that you should.
We can totally look it up on our smartphones.
Oh, the hell with that! Yeah,
and I've only been in the business for 20 years, and I still don't know.
We're just like the little one and the big one. Yeah,
don't even care. The little one and the big one.
Yeah. And there's the adapters go missing all the time, and you're like, how? They should just be plugged in. And anyone who's
where I work now in Westwood 1,
yeah,
they have both of the female.
Nice.
Yeah. It's the only place I've ever worked.
God, it only took 30 years for that to happen.
Right?
It's so
the
intuitive.
Only place I've ever worked where it doesn't matter if you have the adapter or not. But anyway,
you've sold me.
So
I want to work there.
So I remember, here's the thing though, they would come in, and because all the other shows had their own headphones, there was never any. JFK doesn't provide headphones. I don't know if they do now.
Like I said, it was just ratty ass. Always like one ear was dead.
Yeah, if there was headphones laying around, they didn't work.
Yeah,
and you had to go filter them out of somebody's cabinet or go to engineering closet and find again, ones. And this was such an issue because I was the one who had to go fetch them, and I'm flipping shows. I'm going from Don and Mike's show to the Sports Junkies.
Yeah,
I don't have time to find headphones. I just don't.
And they're just
I'm not being a
acting.
diva. I just don't have time.
No, they're acting like every day this is a surprise. Like, we need our phones. Why aren't they here? Yeah.
And it's like,
Oh, I could see
I
how that'd
remember
be
just
maddening.
pleading with them, please just buy some cheap headphones. But why? Why should we do that? And for me, it was like because they're your headphones.
It's for
they'll
you,
be
dude.
your very own. You can go to Best Buy and try on all different ones and figure that out. And it was I remember we had a staff meeting about it. I had a meeting with Jeremy and Jim and JP about it because I was just at my wit's end about
that
headphones.
point. Yeah, just for stupid ass headphones.
It was because, again, like I said, they were young and they were green and they didn't understand. To them, they don't know any better. You think about it. If you don't know anything about this equipment we use, what do you know? What do you know that you're supposed to have?
That's true.
To enhance the experience.
You could be like, what am I going to bring my own microphone next? Like, where does it end?
Yeah, now I think I listen to them and I might hear one of them say, I forgot my headphones today, man. I'm, and like I think I heard Eric say that one day. I forgot my headphones and I'm totally disconcerted because I don't have my headphones. And I laugh to myself and I think, oh my God, I remember we used to fight about that. And so it's all water under the bridge because working with them was so much fun. And I've listened to them all these years. I used to listen to them in California because I did morning drive out there. So I'd get up at 3 and they'd be going on the air. So I'd put them up on the fabulous internet and listen to the Junkies open their show. I used to think that was so cool. And it used to bum me out because at 4:15 or 4:20, I'd have to 4:20 California, everybody. I would have to get in my truck and roll down to the station to start my
you didn't want to murder your data.
And I didn't. Well, I was like, dang, I can't get into my truck and keep listening to them.
Gotcha.
For the extra 5 minutes because it was nice little slice of home. And so it
does take you back, man. I remember when I went off to college and I would try to find any illegal feed I could of Don, Mike, and Howard Stern. And this was before stations got off their ass and saw the internet as like a supplemental thing. Do you remember that? They would try to squelch any feed. Like JFK, God forbid they put their own feed online.
And they're only just barely getting, to utilizing it. Same way you see what's going on with television now, where they're starting to produce everything and just put it out. Like if it doesn't make the cut for network TV, they just put it out anyway.
Oh, it just goes on like all these NBC.com or something.
Yeah, right. And you'll see like stuff that you've never heard of, you'll never see again, or whatever. And with radio, I think Clear Channel, well, I guess it's really iHeart because iHeart bought Clear Channel while I was out in California. iHeart's done a tremendous job integrating the online thing with their stations. And probably the best, it's amazing how dreadfully in debt they are, but it's because they've extended themselves. I think if anybody has a chance to turn a dollar in this business out of the big companies, it'd be iHeart. They just have to catch up. It'd be interesting to see. I mean, that's so deep inside, a lot of people aren't going to understand what we're talking about. But that's why it's disheartening when you hear that CBS is going to sell all their radio stations. They're just giving up when, quite honestly, speaking for myself as a producer 20 years in and having had the luxury of my first editing was with a razor blade and a grease pen and reels of tape and a Studer deck.
Jesus.
And I
thankfully got to dodge that.
Going from that to Adobe, which the digital editing platform and all
just
the other
cut and paste and
the other ones that were in between, the Roland. At JFK, we first started digital editing with the Roland, big bulky thing that would crash on you in the middle of producing something and make you cry. And
happened a lot.
Yeah, and so it's disheartening that CBS is just going to fold up and sell all their stations because there's so much to do. And that's why when people say radio is dead, they simply don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, it's not working in the way we've known it for like 50, 60 years all that well anymore. But there's, like you said, there's a ton to do. You still have these high-end studios, you have talent.
Yeah,
Like, put it out in another way.
right. And monetize it. There's ways to profit off of it, but you have a lot of people in the business that it's very transitional right now. You have a lot of old people in the business that are ready to retire, and they're old salespeople with old business models. I'm not begrudging them, but it'll take care of itself. Um, I don't know how we got on that tangent or where we're going to go from there, but
it was talking junkies and headphones, and then you're going to talk the entirety of radio,
right? Now I'm recreating the whole business. Oh well, as far as people saying radio would be dead, I don't think it can be dead, because I think you're always going to have your grid of AM and FM stations out there in case of a national or world emergency where all our satellites and internets just disappear.
Oh, it'll just be
our cell
the AM
phones.
clear channels,
Right? I mean, they will always be out there, and their tower amps will sit there and glow forever, because there's a need for that. But I'm sorry.
Need for that and bringing your own headphones.
Yeah, seriously. So I wasn't happy with the junkies, and Don found out about that and knew it, and eventually came to me and said, well, there's going to be some changes at the station. This was when O&A were coming on board to replace Howard, I guess. And
or no, they were going to be afternoon drive, I think, right? And then Don and Mike.
No, it had been decided that much as Don didn't like it at the time, and we all, if you follow that history, it's what happened. Some of the greatest radio wars ever.
That was hardcore, yeah.
It had been decided because they were doing mornings up in New York, and then Howard went to satellite, and so they gave O&A the mornings down at JFK, and they're going to leave Don and Mike. We went to middays. Yeah, it was Don and Mike middays. Oh, maybe O&A went to afternoons. You're right, and then Don and Mike went middays.
I think Stern was satellite in 04, 05, something like that.
Oh, okay, so Stern was in the morning, and then Don and Mike middays, and then
I think they swallowed kind of an S pill, if you will, so that they could be packaged and put in New York and Philly and all that, and it was like sold as this like block of guy talk, like
right?
Just this wall of it,
right? And so that explains why. Yeah, that explains why. Because having told the story of 9/11, why I was in the studio right after that had all gone down, because it was 10 in the morning. It was 9:30 in the morning when I was getting ready we were getting ready to switch. So when all that transpired, they had a spot on Don and Mike for the phone screener position. It was a lateral move. I don't think I may have gotten a slight raise in pay.
Now,
not much.
What slots were there for the Don and Mike for the Don and Mike show, other obviously than the talent, but like what positions were there? Because by the time I'm at JFK, you're talking talent, then just a board up and like a call screener / producer. But I always felt Don and Mike had at least a little more behind the scenes than that.
Yeah, well, you had Don and Mike and Rob in the studio.
And Rob's role, he was kind of the producer sometimes, like, right? I mean, he would be producer, and then they would give him another title.
Yeah, he was producer between getting qualified producers. I mean, gotcha. Rob's not really a producer. To be a producer, like, I mean, we're all producers. I always consider myself an assistant producer because I was a board op and I was editing all the best of and stuff like that. So you are a producer, you're an assistant producer, but the executive producer, you got to be on. You have to want to be at your desk 24/7, and that includes being at home.
You're just a producer. You're booking guests.
And you're dealing with the salespeople. You're dealing with the talent. You're booking the trips, the appearances, all that. You can't just be. Rob's just too nice to do that. He's too happy-go-lucky. He didn't want to do it. That's why he wasn't successful at it. You have to be really detail-oriented. I couldn't do it. Well, maybe I could. Now I could, but not then. Now you have to have, so it was Don, Mike, and Robin studio. Charlie Broyhill had been executive producer. But he moved to ops director, and Lisa Herndon became producer, and I was phone screener. And then,
so between those times, then Rob is in essence just a third mic.
a what?
He's like their third mic.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, he's a
odd thing to say, given like they're all named Mike in real life.
To give him what he was, and it's not a bad thing at all. He's a studio engineer, so he makes sure that anything that might go wrong, or he's making sure the tape decks are running. He's getting the traffic, making sure it's queued up. I mean, that's true studio engineering.
Yeah.
So he's a studio engineer.
Buzz and News.
Oh yeah, we forgot about Buzz.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Buzz's weird little studio.
Yeah, the fish tank.
God, I used to walk in there, yeah, when I was working at JFK, and just kind of it was a weird little secluded thing. I didn't understand
that was the
that.
studio for the aforementioned Redskins network board.
Real okay. Yeah. So they put you in that little cockpit almost.
Mm-hmm.
So you are running their board, and like
no, not Don and Mike's board. I was doing their phones.
You were okay. That's right. You're a screener. I'm sorry. So actually, Rob then is on their board.
No, Don ran his own board.
That is crazy.
Always. Yeah.
Always. That's right. I remember watching the Sex Pies and videotape.
Yeah, yeah, and it was fun because sometimes Rob
board.
would have to go do something with his kids or doctor's appointments, stuff like that. So I would be the next one to go in there and work with Don. Of course, I knew them by now, so it wasn't.
And you came up listening to them, right? So this was
pretty much, yeah. I mean, I listened to them when they were on afternoons. I listened to them some on AVA. I remember. Actually, I'll tell you what. Here's my history with Don goes back to like 1986, 85 or 86, when he was afternoon drive on WAVA playing Madonna records. And
this is before Mike, yeah.
And doing his rap and doing his shtick at the time, which was real basic stuff. Bart was the weather boy and Frida was on, and there was and Big Frida was on, and he would do just really shticky stuff. I mean, Don had not really come into his own yet, but you could tell, and I would listen to it. I would say, sometimes I would think, boy, that is some hokey stuff, but I listened to him every day because I couldn't wait for Don Geronimo's show to come on. And he used to do, I was a courier in DC with my little red pickup truck. And so I would listen. And when he did like a phone booth Olympics and stuff, I would go and check it out. I could never participate, but I would go check it out. Actually, before it was phone booth Olympics, it was just go to a phone booth and you would get a prize. And you try to get as many people at a certain phone.
Really? Okay.
For you kids out there used to be telephones, like outside of every store.
Yeah.
You would go up and put a quarter in it and you could call somebody.
Now Superman has nowhere to change.
Really something else. And so, yeah. And then I remember the day that he said, it was a Friday, and he said, going on vacation, and when I come back, we are starting a new morning zoo with my new colleague, Mike O'Mara. I remember that.
Wow.
And so being a courier, I would listen. And back then, Greaseman was hot.
Was he on 101 at that point, Greaseman?
Yeah.
Okay.
Greaseman was at his zenith, And so between the two of them, you had great morning radio. And then eventually Don and Mike, when they moved to afternoons, though, when Howard took over and became king of all media and all that stuff. So Don and Mike moved to afternoons, and by then I was painting houses. So we would listen to them every day.
On that faithful paint splattered boombox that
yeah. A couple of those, eventually they'd break and you'd throw them out the van window on the way home. More than one. Yeah, and so that's how far back I go with Don.
So it must be like blowing your mind to be legit working with this guy. Like you take a radio class.
I always say to my brother,
Yeah.
now I say to my brother, you know, you called and said we would be Don and Mike. I said, all I ever wanted to do, and I still say this, all I ever wanted to do in this business was jock a few classic rock records. That's all I wanted to do. Even be the night jock. That's all I wanted to do.
Spin something, yeah.
I never wanted to be Howard Stern. I never wanted to be Don and Mike. I never wanted to be the shock jock.
I find there is that divide with the guys at, especially the Guy Talk stations. There are those like you who are like, you know what? I love music on air, and that's my focus.
And I've only done like 2 shifts in my entire professional career of jocking records, and I did them up at Arrow. I was trained at Arrow to do a shift, and then never did a shift.
Jeez.
So that's where I met Weasel, and
oh Christ, Weasel.
And I met Surf there, but I already knew Surf.
Yeah,
because he'd come to Don and Mike appearances and say hi. So, and
so by the time you're with Don and Mike, they are 15 years in their career,
I guess.
Like, when are they? What's it like a day of working with them? Are they rolling in 5 minutes before air? I mean, are you there and seeing them hours beforehand? Like, just walk me through a day with those guys.
Boy, when I would do that gig, what did I do? I guess I came in an hour before to see what needed to be done. Oh, back then I used to go to 7-Eleven and get like 8 bottles of Avion water before the show, and all these supplies that we got because we had an account with 7-Eleven. And it was funny. And I'd set up the studio. That's what I did. I'd come in and I would set up the studio, all the carts, all the commercial carts, make sure everything was in order, test out the phones, everything. Everything in order.
I just want to say, you guys had such a presence in Fairfax that when I was at JFK, again, I want to say, Christ, 2011, I would just call around seeing where I could like mention we had the show, you know, we were on air and we wanted food. And I would call the local Domino's and I would say, hey, what can you do for a pizza? And they'd be like, is this for Don and Mike? Like, I'm calling at 8 p.m. I'm working the night shift with Bill Rowland. And I would just say, yes, it's for Don and Mike, who hadn't been on air in years together. And that was it. Just free pizza.
Oh, yeah. It was a rock star gig, too. I mean, it was so I would set up the studio and then I'd go back and sit at the phones and off we went, you know. And Don was always up in the office an hour before the show. Mike rolled in about 15 minutes before the gig started because that's what Mike did. You know, that was his role. But I mean, once Don came into the studio, you just cleared it. You know, it's just like, you know, just clear it. And Don's always been really nice. I mean,
and they would just crush.
Very, very, very business. You know, Don's all about business. Although when I moved to California to work with him, we had a lot of fun. I really got to know Don on a friend's level.
Yeah.
Or, you know, although we were already friends out in California, we had a lot of fun, and it was a lot. And my role was different out there, because I was on mic, I was the board op, but I also did a lot of, you know, colored the shows a lot, you know.
Yeah, and I guess for those that don't know, because I feel at this point the show's pretty much for us, and I don't give a damn. Don left radio maybe like 07-ish in that range,
I guess.
Yeah, and then immediately realized, like, dude, this is all I want to do in life. It's all I can. And I think comes back to radio eventually, winding up in Sacramento doing a sports show, and you, I guess, were part of that. I didn't get to listen to it a ton.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, everybody knows, and if you don't, I mean, Don's wife Frida was killed in a car crash.
Yeah.
And that led to his retirement. And
it was like a year though, right? Or because he took something like 3 weeks off after she passed.
Yeah,
I remember I was just so bummed out. You know, it's weird.
Tell me about it.
Holy Christ, man.
There. And yeah, but the thing is, he just couldn't do it, and so he, quote, retired. He moved up to Ocean City. He started doing a little radio up there, I guess. And of course, we were doing the Mike O'Mara show, and that was going fine. But then the sports switch happened, and they canned us because they're going all sports.
Did you guys know that was in the works at all, or no?
Yeah, we knew.
Really? Okay. Because
We're hoping against hope.
Yeah, that was a
we're
weird.
hoping we could stay because our ratings were really pretty good.
Really?
We were
Okay.
in top 5 easily.
That was a weird year. So Don leaves. Mike's like, I'm going to stay on. The rest of the cast.
Yeah, and
is
I was
staying
doing my Saturday night show too, which was doing great too. So I was trying to get out of the Mike O'Mara show and get the 7 o'clock spot, 7 to 10 spot. And there's all kinds of things going on, but we knew it was going to go to sports. But I remember begging CK, please let me take 7 to 10s, regardless of the sports, because I had Joe Radio going, and that was kind of pseudo political. It was like Art Bell meets Bill O'Reilly.
Really interesting.
Not quite as ignorant as Bill O'Reilly, but but it was, and that was going well. I had really pretty good numbers, surprising numbers actually. So it was going somewhere, and I hope to pick that up. I'm actually developing that again as we speak. I'm developing, hopefully in 2017. That will. I mean, I don't say hopefully. I think it's going to. It's just a matter of finding the right PD.
Really?
But anyway, that's in the future. And
yeah, man, keep me in the loop on that one.
Tomorrow's promised to no one. So Don was toying around up there in the Ocean City area on an AM station, just doing his thing. And then that didn't really work for him. And then apparently he got an offer to go to Sacramento. And I'd been kind of in touch with Don via email, here and there, and asked him about Sacramento. And he goes, yeah, man, I'm going to go back out and do the good old timey radio show that I'm known for.
And it was a market, I'll just add, that was very friendly to Don and Mike during their tenure.
Huge,
they were syndicated
huge,
there. Yeah, and they were just gigantic.
Yeah. And he said, I think when he left, he said, hey, he said, would you come out there to work if I could get you out there? And I said, sure, because my marriage had fallen apart.
Jeez.
It was, and I was
sorry. I just remember you being married back in the show days. And
yeah, we'd been fired, and that was like 2009. We got fired, I guess. And so I was painting houses again, pressure washing, stuff like that, contracting, and working retail, because when you work in radio for 15 years, you're fully qualified to sell tools at Lowe's. That's about it. So that's what I was doing. So he gets out there, and he's out there about 6 months, and he shoots me an email, and he says, well, what do you think about coming out and doing like 7 to 10 in Sacramento? He said, it won't be your own show. He said, but you'll be with a group of these guys that I've got out here that I would like to. He said, I'd like you to like corral them. He said,
sounds familiar.
You'll have your name on the show.
Really? Okay.
But I need somebody who knows what they're doing with the board and the equipment and stuff, because I don't trust these guys, but they're funny. And,
was he program directing out there too? Or
yeah.
Oh, okay.
At that point he was. So the original idea was for me to go out there and be part of a show, but an expanded part, not just behind the scenes assistant producer or whatever you want to call it, board op, but more like a name,
like an
chair, probably like second or third chair. And I said, sure. I said, but figure out what you got, but make sure, I got to have money, because I'm going to be in a strange man in a strange land, so I got to have a decent salary.
Did he tell you to find a painting gig? No.
Right. He said, yeah, don't worry about it. So I'm waiting patiently on that. And then about a month later, he goes, that fell through. He goes, I don't have what I thought. I don't have the budget I thought. And they won't let me take that and do something with it. He said, but stay put, because I got some ideas. And Don's always got ideas. So, I mean, if someone like Don tells you he's got ideas, that's a good thing. It's like, okay, So I'm thinking summer of, when did I go out there? 2011? Summer 2011. Actually, it was September, last week of September in 2011, I think. He calls and he says, my board op left, which later became a really good friend of mine. Drew left and went to San Francisco. So I've got my board op position open for you. And he said, there'll be lots more for you to do. He said, you don't have to worry about setting up the studio and stuff. I got a guy for that. So you're just going to come in and you're going to have your studio and your board and
rap on air with him pretty much.
Yeah. It's going to be a really good gig. And I said, all right, so what's the money? And he gave me the money. And I was like, I said, I'll tell you what, I said, I always like to say I'll sleep on these things, So I'll give you an answer tomorrow, but I think I know what I'm going to say. Because the money for Sacramento was awesome.
You're living like a pirate lord.
Well, I mean, not that well, but I mean, between the fact that you can get a 1-bedroom apartment for $600,
oh God,
and I was going to be living, I ended up getting that apartment a mile and a half from the station because that was the other thing I told him. I said, I want to live close to the station. I've got what I want, in it. So the money was great. The next day I called him and said, yeah, I'll be there in 3 weeks. And I worked at Lowe's for 2 weeks. And then that last week I gave away everything, sold everything, and whatever else fit in my truck went with me and headed across the country. And I got there right before. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it was September all that happened. So I got there in the first week of October. And the rest is history. We had a lot of fun out there. And then we got fired for the same reason. The station wanted to go all sports, and the ratings went straight down into the tube, And that's where the whole thing with CBS comes round robin. It's like, I don't know why they just keep doing this, and then they don't understand why they don't.
Their ratings are in the crapper.
Yeah, and now they want to sell all their stations. It's like I said, I mean, more power to you, because I believe it's going to open up a lot of opportunity in the business. I really do, because somebody's got to buy those places. Somebody's going to say, yeah, we want that. I mean, the Sacramento market alone, they have the ESPN people right across the street. And it's funny. The ESPN station sometimes beats the CBS sports station in ratings, and the CBS sports station has the Kings contract. That's how bad it is. That's how bad the management is. Jeez. That's why, and it's they don't have any forward vision. And when you've got ESPN being piped in across the street and it's beating your station that has the Kings contract, you're doing all these Kings promotions, and
literally
you've got the signage at the arena. KHTK signage is all around the arena, and you're getting beat a 1.2 to your 1.0, because that's all you're pulling in the Sacramento market with your sports anyway is 1 point. I mean, it becomes insanity.
Huh. Dude, we're gonna have to do a second half to this, because I know we're up on time, but I want to do a lot. Are you good with that?
Well, I don't know when I'll be able to get back out here. It took us 2 years to line this up anyway. Ever since I got back from California, you've been saying, hey, can you do this? I'm like, yeah, I can. Oh, I can't do this. But yeah, we can do it.
All right. That is part 1 of the Joe Ardinger interview on Papa's Basement, and part 2 forthcoming, hopefully 2018.
Yeah, at this rate.
Hopefully we'll get it in before that. Joe, thanks, man. And
my pleasure.
Let's do Patriots right after.
Yeah, possible. Why not?
Yeah, twisted your arm.